Story 1. He became quite unpleasant as he grew up, displaying sexist and racist behavior. I never consciously decided to stop talking to him, but I gradually stopped putting in any effort to maintain the friendship, and it eventually faded away. Story 2. I got involved in some questionable activities with dangerous individuals. He has been missing for a few months. That is the last I heard about him. He is probably dead. Story 3. This happened frequently, either due to a falling out, someone moving away, or simply drifting apart. Story 4. We were members of the same high-control cult-like church. I realized it was built on lies and left. She asked why I left. I told her. She never spoke to me again. Story 5. As I transitioned into high school, it became easier to make new friends than to find the time to keep connections with old ones. Our conversations became increasingly spaced out until we stopped talking altogether. Story 6. He became heavily involved in bodybuilding, began using steroids, nearly killed a person over a minor incident at a bar, and spent 14 years in prison. Story 7. We went to different universities. He was going to get married and didn't invite me. I thought, I guess that's that. Story 8. Our parents used to insist that we get married. This made me uncomfortable, so I stopped talking to them for around 5 years. I reconnected with them, but the vibes were off and they very rarely talk to me now. I guess I should have told them what happened, but I was worried they had a crush on me. I was a kid, though. Story 9. Just drifted apart. I didn't even know she liked me. I was already making new friends and interested in other girls. Before I realized it, I looked back and she was no longer there. It's crazy how people just drift apart. Story 10. He decided that he wanted to reinvent himself, and I didn't really fit into his new image. The feeling became mutual toward the end. Story 11. I stopped talking to pretty much everyone I've known as a friend. I believe they are better off without me, as I feel I hinder their ability to reach their goals in life. I've been observing them from a distance to see if they are okay, and they all seem to be thriving now. So I guess that's good. Story 12. I moved away. One of my friend's parents reacted negatively to a picture I drew for him of a video game we both enjoyed, and then he moved away. That was about it until high school, and since I didn't drink, they indirectly kicked me out and I severed ties. Story 13. He died. Do not use hard drugs. We started drifting apart when he became the party man and would do anything for attention. Story 14. She was difficult to deal with. Younger me thought her out-of-control moods and attempts to fight me when she drank were attention-seeking behavior, as she always had to be the center of attention. Living with me for free, she would invite random men over late at night while I was asleep, and I had no idea until she brought it up the next day. Her sleeping with my exes was just how she was. It turned out that's who she really is. I wasn't going to put up with it anymore, and I'm glad I shut that door years ago. Story 15. I moved away. We wrote for a while, but it became longer between letters until we just stopped. Story 16. We just grew apart. We were best friends in first grade up until 5th grade when she moved across the country. We stayed in contact until 7th grade and then just kind of drifted apart. Story 17. In my country, after elementary school, children are separated into different schools based on their needs and potential. I was sent to the highest level of education while she was sent to the lowest. Not being in the same school affected our relationship, and we ran out of things to discuss due to the differences in our educational experiences. Story 18. He met a girl who had a sexual relationship with him. He was a virgin at 18. Then, he became a Jehovah's Witness and stopped being my friend because she told him I was a subversive person. This happened in 1988. I was a virgin too. I missed the guy. We got along well. I just didn't know he was what I now consider to be weak-minded. Story 19. I grew apart from several friends. One kid I knew from kindergarten had a superiority complex that became tiresome by my 20s, so I ended the friendship. Another friend and I drifted apart because he married someone unstable, and we never really reconnected after their separation. By my 30s, I let go of the last remaining friend because it was a toxic relationship. There were several others, but I wasn't that close to them. This was compounded by my career in emergency medical services, which people either understand or they do not. Later in life, I found a great group of friends. In my 40s, my oldest friend is someone I have known for 14 years, and I am very happy with how things turned out. Story 20. I was putting all my effort into trying to stay in touch, while he couldn't be bothered replying to my communications. Story 21. He got married right after they lifted COVID-19 restrictions, literally the weekend after. My family and I went since he promised to ensure everyone wore masks and maintained distance. That didn't happen, and my mom is highly immune compromised. I ended up confronting his uncle during the reception when he repeatedly ignored my requests to stop getting in my mom's face, despite my polite attempts. We all left right after that, and he hasn't spoken to me since. He has also moved to a different state. Story 22. He is a millionaire because of his father's wealth. It was never an issue because we have known each other since childhood, and his family was not very wealthy back then. Last Christmas, I lost my job and desperately needed $2,000 to keep things going. I asked him for the money, providing a clear repayment date and plan. He said yes and assured me it was not a problem for him. But then, he stopped answering my calls and texts. I was no longer asking for money and told him I had taken a small loan from my bank, so everything was okay. I completely lost interest in talking to him because I do not think he was ever truly a friend. Story 23. I realized I was always there for him whenever he needed anything, regardless of how long it had been since we last spoke due to life events. However, when I required his help after a major operation, he failed to show up on 3 occasions. All he needed to do was come by for a wellness check to ensure I was okay and pick up a few items from the corner shop on the way. It would have taken only about 30 minutes. It still confuses him to this day, especially since I am very friendly with his wife. Story 24. His mother killed him and his 2 sisters with poison tea. I was 7 at the time, so I didn't fully realize what happened. I just knew he was suddenly gone. Story 25. She went back to her husband, and I couldn't be her sounding board anymore every time he did something. Then she drank some political ideology and started making offhand comments about things, as if she wasn't also a single mother who utilized housing assistance and Medicaid at some point. Story 26. One that was intentional was his desire to play with action figures constantly, to an unusual extent. It was enjoyable when we were younger, but by 4th grade, I was outgrowing it. I got an unsettling vibe from him. Things escalated when his parents contacted mine to inquire why we weren't spending time together. And his father unexpectedly showed up at our house to speak with my dad. I don't know what my dad said, but it never happened again. I remained polite with him at school, but that was the extent of our interaction. Later on, he was expelled for brandishing a knife at school. I have no idea where he is now. I've had many good friends with whom I lost contact over time due to being in different parts of the world. It happens gradually, and one day you realize you haven't spoken to them in years. Story 27. We took him in after his parents kicked him out for, according to them, not being part of the family. God forbid a teenager wants to spend time with his friends and girlfriend over his parents and 2 very young siblings. We helped him finish high school, and once he left for college, he disappeared. I tried reaching out a few times but didn't get anything back. The other friend changed a lot over the year. He went from a typical nerd to a hardcore stoner. That was fine, but he then started to mock us for things he was into less than a year ago. One day he said he had a lot of marijuana that he was going to try to sell but smoked it all. These were some dangerous people, so he needed to pay them back as soon as possible. A few of us scraped together some cash, and it turned out the story was a lie. He just wanted to buy more marijuana. Story 28. I almost slept with my best friend's girlfriend during my junior year of high school. He found out that summer and we never spoke again. I didn't even go through with it. Story 29. She married a conservative, and I am a non-binary transgender person married to a non-white, non-American. We do not live in America. Story 30. She got drunk at our home and expressed how much she would like to be intimate with my then-boyfriend, then suggested a threesome. If I wasn't interested, I could just watch. We put her to bed and were both repulsed. We were polite the next morning, but once she left, I changed my phone number and blocked her from my life. I have been with that man for 27 years and married for 19. I always envisioned her being my bridesmaid. We are friends on social media now, but it took 20 years. Story 31. My friend became a corporate attorney who graduated at the top of his class. I entered the family business of drug sales and ended up going to prison. He lives in Orange County. Needless to say, we are no longer friends. Story 32. She married a controlling preacher, moved to a remote area in Tennessee, and cut off contact with her friends and eventually her family. It is sad. Story 33. I was with him on the day my father had planned spinal surgery, and I wanted to visit him in the hospital. He complained that I shouldn't spend my time with him instead, and that was when I began to realize that this relationship was toxic. For 15 years, I allowed him to belittle, bully, and degrade me while our parents thought we were best friends. Now, 20 years later, I understand that he was extremely jealous of my life because I performed better in school and had a much better relationship with my parents than he did. Story 34. We grew apart. I met my childhood friend a few years ago and did not realize she was 3 years younger than me. When you are 19 and find out she is 16, it makes you realize that the friendship was never going to last. She grew up in a wealthy family and is currently studying at an expensive private college in the United Kingdom, while my family and I are struggling to put food on the table. The difference in our wealth became apparent, and even though she was polite, I could tell she wanted nothing to do with me. Story 35. I left and joined the Navy. When I came back, he was still getting high every day and living unemployed. I got married and had a child. He had a couple of children he never saw and didn't pay child support for. I worked in a factory, went to school, and earned a nursing degree. He remained unemployed and had been in rehabilitation a few times. I bought a house and built a stable career. He was always trying to borrow money and was still struggling with addiction. I'm happy and living my best life. He passed away from an overdose 2 months ago. Story 36. My life was falling apart, and she said I wasn't any fun anymore. Yes, I apologize for my mom being hospitalized and losing my job. Let's definitely talk about your party. Story 37. Life happened, I guess. One summer, when we were 11, we swam in my apartment community pool, swearing we would be best friends forever and proudly proclaiming sisters before misters. The next thing I know, we are seniors fighting over the hypocrisy I feel about what she started doing with guys. A fight I still feel guilty about. Now she and I have completely different lives on opposite sides of the country. Story 38. She took her own life 2 years ago. I hadn't spoken to her in 15 years due to middle school drama and mistakes on my part. Now she is gone. I suppose I could talk to her headstone. Story 39. He married someone difficult. Here is an important tip for everyone. If someone has an issue with your partner, it could be either them or your partner who is at fault. If many people have a problem with your partner, it may not be everyone else who is in the wrong. It could be your partner. Story 40. They developed unusual racial biases that made it difficult to interact in public and get along with their larger social circle. Story 41. We were friends from age 4 to 17. I went to a party with her, and the plan was to camp out with 2 male friends. She was involved with one of them, while the other one was trying to get with me all night. He cornered me in the restroom, exposed himself, and told me to perform a sexual act. I said no and told him to go away. I went into the tent and my friend was making out with the other guy. I decided to let it go and try to get some sleep. I woke up with the guy on top of me, kissing me with his pants half down. I freaked out and pushed him off me. I told my friend I was leaving, but she said she didn't want to leave because she was having fun. It was 5 in the morning, and I called my mom to come get me, leaving her behind. I received a number of abusive messages from my best friend for leaving. She never asked why. I never got the chance to tell her. That was 14 years ago. Story 42. All my friends will always hold a special place in my mind due to the fun memories we shared as kids. However, I am no longer close to those who tend to be overly negative about life. I also do not spend as much time with people who have a toxic attitude. After all, I need to protect my own mental health and spiritual well-being. It is important to keep your energy levels balanced. Story 43. Trying to make them talk about themselves was challenging. Eventually, they said my life was so sad that they couldn't handle it and felt like they couldn't share their life because mine was just so sad. Honestly, it made me upset in the moment, but looking back on it all, it wasn't surprising at all. Story 44. She got a job in Europe, and since she has money now, she feels there is no need to maintain her friendship with me, as I am from the Philippines. Story 45. Some went to different schools, some ended up in different classrooms with various subjects. None of my school friends attended my university. Story 46. They moved away. In the past, there were no social media platforms, making it more difficult to stay in touch. Story 47. I was an army child. We moved every 2 years or so. I have had many childhood friends over the years, all of whom I lost contact with. Nothing dramatic happened. We just drifted apart due to jobs and families. Story 48. How it started was I received a phone call from my fiancé's mother that she had disappeared that night. They live separately because her parents got her and her children a house to help her while my mother lives with me until she passes away from stage 4 metastasized cancer, and no one could find her. Knowing her history, including her diagnosed borderline personality disorder and past trips to facilities, I was quite concerned. However, this was not the first time she needed calm people around her, not anxious ones. So I went through the necessary steps to try to find her. After about 7 hours of searching with her siblings and parents, and checking all the usual spots, I received a call from her saying she was fine. She just needed a break from the kids. I understood that this was a difficult disorder to manage, and certain things were beyond her control. In the following weeks, everything seemed better, but then we received a call from her job. They were understanding of the situation but mentioned that she had been calling out too frequently from work. It was a small local establishment where everyone felt like family. They asked if I could check in on her, and they would wait for news. I was confused because she had been going in every usual day at the regular times. When I asked her about it, she explained that work had been more stressful than usual and that she had gone to her boyfriend's house to rest while he played games, as he had been perpetually unemployed since experiencing a bad trip on LSD, from which he had never fully recovered. Nothing seemed too suspicious at first, but then my best friend's sister mentioned she had heard unusual noises that could not have been made while asleep. I went to the boyfriend and said, "You were my closest friend, and I've known you since birth, so just be honest with me. Don't lie, just be upfront." He assured me nothing had happened, and those sounds were from him and his girlfriend in the bathroom. I chose to believe him. About 2 weeks later, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, so I stopped by her workplace to say hello and pick up some small items for my mom. However, she wasn't there. I then went to his house, parked a little way down the street, and walked behind his house. Considering that all 6 of the closest families were related, this wasn't unusual for us. I looked into his blind bedroom window and saw undeniable proof. I left and went to talk to her parents to figure out the best approach, especially since her children were already calling me Dad. Given her conditions, it was too much for me to handle alone. Once we all gathered to talk and she found out we knew, she spiraled into a breakdown, screaming, crying, kicking, and clawing at the ground, and was admitted to a psychiatric ward again. Her parents gained custody, and I continued to see the kids on weekends. Several months later, I tried to reconnect because I was scared of losing people. We were sitting by a fire, listening to music and discussing various subjects. I mentioned that as long as nothing from the past was brought up, I wanted to try to move forward. He then had some alcohol and started talking about how he had just found out she was cheating on him, which caused him great pain. I stood up, walked away, and it has been 3 years since then. Despite everything that happened, I still miss our friendship deeply, but there's no way to go back. He has since tried various substances and has been arrested for bestiality involving 4 different species. So that's my story. Story 49. She got married to a man who acted immaturely and had 2 children, so she was essentially taking care of 3 children, managing the household and working. She had no time for friends. We stopped talking for a few years. We have since reconnected. She has more time now that her former husband is divorced and the children are older. Story 50. She had a child with a drug dealer who wanted nothing to do with the baby. After her son was born, she changed. She became deeply devoted to Jesus. The friendship ended there because our views were no longer aligned. She focused more on our differences than I did, so it just fizzled out. Story 51. He betrayed me and joined the other kids who bullied me mercilessly. Years later, we found each other on Facebook, and he has become a racist, xenophobic, anti-vaccination supporter of Donald Trump. He is also English. He turned out to be really strange. I tried to be cordial and catch up, but the conversation quickly shifted to politics, so I ceased communication for the second time in 40 years. Story 52. We grew apart fundamentally as individuals. I matured while he still believes that running from the police, using drugs, and engaging in negative behavior is acceptable. After about 17 years, I realized that I do not want to associate with individuals who casually use derogatory language. Story 53. She wished under her breath that, insert boy name, S parents had divorced instead of another classmate's. Her parents were also divorced for context, but she couldn't remember the details because she was two and didn't seem to notice how messy or difficult divorces could be. The boy hadn't even done anything wrong. He could be a poser sometimes, but she couldn't provide a solid reason for her dislike. Story 54. At the time, I was definitely the odd one out. My childhood friends all had strict mothers. They loved coming to my house because my parents didn't care what we ate or what we did. But as I grew up, I was considered the weird one. I was very clumsy and often accidentally broke things, and I was a bit chubbier than my friends. Eventually, they started to distance themselves from me. Story 55. This is a bit of a complicated story, so trigger warning for sexual abuse. The initial reason my friend and I stopped being friends was that she said she could not associate with me because my family does not believe in God. She told me I was sinful and that she could not hang out with me anymore. This was during 6th grade. The reason I stopped talking to her completely was when I found out that she had sexually abused me. Traumatic memories can be repressed for some time, which is what happened to me, so I did not even remember it until years later. I am not upset with her. We were both children, and I do not know what she was going through at home that made her act like that, but it definitely affected me. I do not know where she is or what happened to her, but I have always wondered if she remembers what she did and how she feels about it. I do not plan on reaching out to her, and I have gone to therapy and worked through it. It is a sad story, but such things do happen. Story 56. Usually, everything is very mundane. You attend different schools and stop communicating because you make new friends at the new school. The same occurs when you go to university. You forget your friends from school and make new friends at university. Then the same thing happens at work. Story 57. He grew up to be a strange person and kept asking me for intimacy while manipulating his girlfriend in a harmful way. I left with his girlfriend, and we have been happily married for more than a decade. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.